You can learn everything you need to know about a man, not from what he says, but from how he behaves under pressure, in conflict, and when he believes no one of importance is watching. Niccolò Machiavelli, the razor-sharp observer of human nature and the brutal dynamics of power, didn't waste time theorizing about intentions. He focused on outcomes, patterns, and exposure. According to Machiavelli, weakness doesn't always wear a sign, but certain behaviors repeated over time unmask the fragile, the insecure, and the weak. In the Machiavellian lens, weakness is not about physical strength or wealth. It is about mental fragility, emotional instability, and a man's inability to hold and project power. Weakness is something a man tries to conceal, but like a poorly hidden secret, it bleeds out through subtle behaviors. And the world, especially those who seek to dominate or manipulate, can smell it. So what are these behaviors? How does Machiavelli and the world around you identify a weak man instantly? Let's begin where all true power is tested, in conflict. One of the first signs of a weak man, Machiavelli observed, is an overreaction to disrespect. He may puff up in rage, insult back, or demand an instant apology. It looks like strength, but it isn't. It's insecurity. The man whose ego is so fragile that he must defend every minor jab is not powerful. He's exposed. Machiavelli believed true strength is measured in restraint. A powerful man chooses his battles. A weak one fights them all, not for justice, but to soothe his own wounded pride. The need to constantly prove oneself is, paradoxically, proof that one has nothing solid beneath the surface. Equally telling is the behavior of a man who avoids confrontation entirely. If a man never stands up for himself, always laughs off disrespect, and constantly shrinks to keep the peace, Machiavelli would call him weak, not peaceful. He understood that the avoidance of conflict is often not wisdom, but fear disguised as virtue. A man who cannot draw a line, even when others cross it, is a man who has surrendered control over his own value. And the world, cold as it is, punishes those who refuse to protect their boundaries. Another behavior Machiavelli would immediately associate with weakness is the need for validation. He warned against flattering others and needing to be flattered in return. A man constantly fishing for approval, through social media, through boasting, through exaggerated humility, is revealing a deeper hunger, the need for others to confirm his worth. That hunger is a liability. It makes a man manipulable. Those who crave constant recognition are the easiest to deceive, flatter, and control. For Machiavelli, a strong man is self-referencing. He decides his worth internally and lets his results, not his words, do the talking. Closely related is emotional inconsistency. Weak men, Machiavelli would note, are governed by their moods. They praise you one day and resent you the next. They shift opinions depending on who is in the room. They act warm in private but cold in public. Why? Because they are not anchored in conviction. They are driven by fear, image, and convenience. And in politics, in life, such men are dangerous only in the short term. Long term, they destroy themselves through inconsistency. Strength requires steadiness. Weakness flails. Machiavelli also noted that weak men often display cruelty masked as strength. Because they lack the internal authority to lead with respect, they resort to domination. They mock others, humiliate subordinates, or lash out at those beneath them. But make no mistake, this is not power. It is fear disguised as command. Machiavelli wrote that it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But the fear he described was strategic, measured, never born from emotion or insecurity. A man who bullies others to feel superior is simply broadcasting his inferiority in the most desperate way possible. Then there is the issue of indecision. A man who cannot make decisions without polling the room, who waffles when pressed, who delays action for fear of failure. This man reveals his weakness without saying a word. Machiavelli admired decisiveness, even when it carried risk. To him, a flawed decision executed boldly was often better than a perfect decision delayed until it was too late. Inaction, born from fear of judgment or failure, was weakness in its rawest form. In the real world, the man who hesitates while others act becomes irrelevant, or worse, replaceable. We also see weakness in the behavior of a man who constantly blames others. The need to shift responsibility, whether subtly or overtly, exposes a man's lack of inner accountability. Strong men own their decisions, even the bad ones. Weak men hide behind excuses. If the weather, the system, the boss, the friend, the economy, the algorithm, the timing, the world is always to blame, Machiavelli would call it what it is: fear wearing a mask. A man who cannot accept fault cannot grow, and a man who cannot grow will eventually be discarded by time. Weak men also reveal themselves through desperate loyalty to groups over principles. They hide behind teams, titles, ideologies, or identities, because these offer protection from the hard work of independent thinking. Machiavelli valued loyalty to results, not labels. He'd say, a man who believes something simply because it's safe or popular is not thinking. He's surviving. That survival mindset can be manipulated, twisted, and used, which is why the truly powerful never attach themselves blindly to anything that can't evolve. There's also a quieter kind of weakness. The man who is always available, always eager to please, always adjusting to others at the cost of his own values. This people pleaser seems kind, generous, and humble, but Machiavelli would see the truth. Beneath the smiles is a fear of rejection. A man who fears being disliked will eventually be disrespected. The moment you teach people that your presence, time, and loyalty are available to anyone, with no price or standard, you have told the world that your worth is negotiable. One of the most overlooked but dangerous signs of a weak man, according to Machiavelli's logic, is the inability to learn from failure. Weak men often repeat their mistakes because they are too proud to admit fault or too afraid to change. They blame, deny, or justify, but they don't adapt. A powerful man, on the other hand, turns every failure into refinement. He studies his setbacks like a military strategist, not an emotional victim. In Machiavellian terms, the man who cannot learn will eventually be ruled by the man who can. Lastly, there's the behavior that seals it all: envy disguised as criticism. Weak men hate seeing others succeed, especially in areas where they feel insecure. They'll attack, belittle, or undermine, not because they have a better idea, but because someone else's success reminds them of their own inadequacy. Machiavelli understood envy as a corrosive force. The truly powerful do not resent others rising. They either rise with them or rise higher. But the weak, they sit and throw stones from below. So where does this leave us? Machiavelli never asked you to be perfect. He didn't demand you never feel fear or insecurity. He simply wanted you to recognize them and then act beyond them. His work, though centuries old, speaks directly to today's world, a place where image dominates, strength is misread, and weakness is often celebrated as virtue. But underneath it all, the ancient truth remains. Certain behaviors still expose a man's core. No matter how polished his resume, how loud his voice, or how many followers he has, you can fake strength, but not for long, because real strength isn't loud. It's calm, it's consistent, it's deliberate, and most of all, it's earned through choice after choice, battle after battle, failure after failure. So ask yourself, not who you admire or who likes you, but what behaviors you're practicing when no one's clapping. Are you the man who bends, crumbles, lashes out, or shrinks in the face of discomfort? Or are you slowly becoming the man who stands tall, not because he must, but because he can? Because in the end, Machiavelli would say, the world doesn't ask who you meant to be. It responds to who you've proven yourself to be.